Eagles secondary must defend Julio Jones and the Falcons. We'll talk Eagles, Falcons, and the NFL slate. Some of the big storylines with 97.3 ESPN.com, Eagles insider John McMullen, today's pigskin.com. He joins us now with a look at this NFL Week 10 matchups. And, John, welcome back, pal. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for having me, guys.
You got it, pal. And, of course, Eagles Falcons really headlines the week here locally, but there's a lot of very interesting NFC East games. We'll dive into them, get your take on all the stuff, all the NFL news and notes too. But today the coordinators spoke, and really Jim Schwartz, when he speaks, he's kind of the guy that brings out the interesting stuff. And you think about some of the things he said today. I thought the most eye-opening of the things that he kind of brought up today was the fact that Nolan Carroll, he's kind of slipped in there that Nolan Carroll's been dealing with a hamstring problem. I don't know that that's been out there before.
No, it hasn't. Nolan hasn't missed practice and certainly hasn't been talking about it. So that's the first time it kind of got out there, and he talked about managing the snaps on both sides because obviously Leotis is dealing with his hamstring injury and has been dealing with it since early in the season. And you saw some Jalen Mills a lot after Leotis struggled early against the Giants. And we've talked about it before. There's not a lot of bodies at that position that you can count on unless you want to throw in a C.J. Smith and sort of see if he can float in the deep end of the pool. So it's a position that's a concern, and a lot of people question why the Eagles don't blitz more when they're not getting to the quarterback and not getting sacks, and that's the reason. You can't blitz when your corners can't hold up on the outside man-to-man, and unfortunately they've had a season where they have a top-tier wide receiver virtually every week, whether it's Odell Beckham, Dez Bryant, Antonio Brown earlier in the season. And now here we are again, and it's Julio Jones. It's just been a stretch where it's really, really difficult when you're playing those types of receivers.
John, how about Leotis McKelvin? I mean, is this one of those things where he's just not going to be the guy they thought they had all year? I mean, is that what it comes down to?
It seems that way. Jim kind of talked about that as well. I mean, hamstrings are a bigger deal for certain positions, namely skill position people on offense and defensive backs on defense. You might be able to get away with it inside if you're a defensive tackle or even an inside linebacker, certainly an offensive lineman. If you have sort of a nagging hamstring, you can make do. But at those positions where you got to go all out running all the time, it can become an issue, and it's been one for Leotis. But, you know, I don't want to overstate it because Leotis McKelvin at 100% is still not a top-tier cornerback in the NFL. So it's a position as a whole that just isn't very good for the Eagles right now.
Yeah, it's a place where this week they're going to have their hands full because this is a team that, as Pete kind of mentioned earlier in the show, they're the top scoring offense. And today, Jim Schwartz said they're not a one-trick pony. They run the ball pretty well, too. The one thing that concerns me watching them over the last couple of weeks is the speed they have out of their backfield. Those guys are guys who can catch the ball and really get going. They're not plodding type of running backs. They're guys who can catch the ball in the backfield and move as well as hit the hole pretty well. So this is a pretty unique challenge because they can run it and pass it. And the Eagles have not seen too many offenses this year that are as complete as this offense.
No, and I mean, there's a reason they're number one, and that is the reason, because it's difficult if you try to take away one thing. Matt Ryan's smart enough to go in another direction, so it's easy to say bracket Julio Jones. You still have Mohamed Sanu you got to deal with, who's an excellent complementary receiver, and you mentioned the guys in the backfield, Freeman and Coleman, both can hurt you. Freeman's the bell cow, and he can run the football. You can give it to him 20, 25 times. They can both catch it out of the backfield. So this is an offense that can come at you in a number of different ways. So As an NFL defensive coordinator, you always want to take something away and try to make teams one-dimensional. And I imagine they're going to try to stop the running game early and at least get Atlanta into third and long situations. That's the best-case scenario. It's still not easy because of the receivers they throw at you, but, hey, you got to attack it from some direction, and right now, it doesn't look like a good matchup on paper. The one thing that sort of throws a curve into that, and we talked about it a little bit yesterday, is the fact that the Eagles have been not a good football team, a great football team at Lincoln Financial Field. They've been dominant. So whatever it is, whether it's the environment, the noise, the comfort factor, whatever it is, they've been a completely different team playing at home, and that's got to come into play because, as I said, on paper it doesn't look good.
Hey, they're getting Logan back, it looks like, this week. What does he add? Because I think Allen has played well. I mean, but I kind of likened it to, hey, when you got that starter guy who is really, really good, the backup guy comes in, he hustles, and he gives you good minutes, but it's still not the same as having that starting, guy. You look at Embiid when he goes out. Rashawn Holmes comes in. Even Okafor comes in. It's just not the same as Embiid leaving the game. So those guys play well, and they try hard, but it's not the same. I mean, Logan's not on that level, but how much of a loss or how much of a gain is it to this defense to get him back?
Oh, it's a big gain. I mean, for one thing, it helps Fletcher Cox a lot because he's very, very comfortable. Those two are not only used to playing together, but they're close friends, and they enjoy playing together. And then you have the fact that Benny's a really good player, and he's a really good player in both phases. He's very good at stuffing the run, and he can get an interior push. And Bo's been, as you mentioned, Mike, he's been good against the run, but they haven't gotten much interior push on the pass rush. So that'll improve with Benny Logan back. And maybe the biggest aspect is you get back to that four-man rotation that Jim likes to run inside instead of having a three-man. And I think you've seen it in the fourth quarter, late in certain games. If you're playing more snaps on defense, you're going to wear down. We saw it a lot in the Chip Kelly era, but it remains true here. And if they can keep guys fresher, and Fletcher and Benny specifically are feeling good and have strong legs in the fourth quarter, it's more likely you're going to have a significant pass rush at a key important part of the game.
John McMullen with us, 97.3 ESPN, as we talk a little Eagles football on this Thursday, the day when the coordinators speak, and Frank Reich also talked today, John, and I know this sounds like a PT question. What's the deal with the run? Yeah, bam, flat out. What's the deal with the run? How does he answer that question?
Well, it's a lot. I mean, we've all been saying it. We say it every week, and there's so many things. At some point, you got to tap out and say they just don't have the horses in the running game. But obviously, a head coach and offensive coordinator can't do that. And I think we're rapidly reaching to that point. Frank raved about Darren Sproles. Knows him from the days back in San Diego. Talked about his impressive, just freakish athleticism, the fact he's legendary in the weight room. He's just such an interesting, unique player, but he's 33 years old and he's got size limitations. So he's not a guy who's going to be Adrian Peterson in his prime carrying the ball 30 times and dominating. That's just not what he is. And he's best served to be in a complementary role. But right now, Ryan Matthews, and we've talked about it all the way dating back to the offseason history of Ryan Matthews and injuries. And it's cropped up, whether it's the lingering effects from concussions, whether it's the ankle injury. He had an infected tooth recently in a swollen jaw. It just seems it's always something with Ryan Matthews. He hasn't been able to do it. And For all the talk about Kenyon Barner and Wendell Smallwood, it's pretty clear that the coaching staff doesn't have complete confidence in either of them. If they did, they'd be getting more touches. So I'm not sure. The Eagles need an improved running game. Everybody knows it, but I'm not sure where it's coming from. And until they get to the offseason and they're able to add talent to that position.
And another topic that came up today was Bryce Treggs. Obviously, the Eagles able to have success against the Giants with at least that 58-yard long deep ball that Carson Wentz threw to Treggs. What did Frank Reich have to say about Treggs, and can we expect to see him more in the offense on Sunday against the Falcons?
Yeah, I think you will see him a little bit more, and maybe incrementally. He's not going to be out there for 80% of the snaps or anything, but it was 15 against the Giants, and Frank sounded pretty excited about what it meant to have that kind of speed on the field because the Eagles don't generally have it out there. So he does bring something to the offense that hasn't had in the fact that he can fly, and you have to respect that no matter what if you're a defense, because it's not like you can allow a guy, even if he's not the best route runner. Treggs is very, very small, obviously, so he's not going to out physical people and go up in high points of football like Julio Jones. But you have to respect that one attribute, and I think you saw it in limited doses against the Giants, and the Eagles are going to try to take advantage of it.
And then, of course, somebody has to throw the ball to him. I know that Frank was asked today, it's the halfway point of the season. Eagles are exactly at the halfway point of the season. And Carson Wentz, what was Frank's assessment of Carson Wentz and his play so far through 8 games?
Well, he's very happy, and he should be. I think we all should be. We got to take a step back and realize this is a rookie quarterback. And not only is it a rookie quarterback, we go back and remember 11 days before the regular season, Teddy Bridgewater goes down 8 days. They make the trade. Everything changes, and he's automatically the starter. And everybody got, rightfully so, really, really excited with the 3-0 start. Nobody likes to lose 4 of 5, but I think if you're looking at it logically, and you're Frank Reich or you're Doug Peterson, and you say, hey, this kid is pretty good considering he doesn't have Ezekiel Elliott, he doesn't have Des Bryant, he doesn't have Jason Witten, he doesn't have the best offensive line in football. And he still makes plays each and every week. He finds a way. Even against the Giants, when he had the really, really poor start, he's able to recover. And he's able to make plays. And that's pretty exciting, or at least it should be exciting when you project down the line. If you can get some playmakers around him, it's only going to get better. So I think from the Eagles standpoint, from the organizational standpoint, they're thrilled where they are at the quarterback position.
They should be, as he's played, I guess he's had his ups and downs, but for some of the things that he sees and does at this stage in his career, and keep in mind he didn't play in the preseason with that injury. I think you've got to be happy moving in that direction. But one area where, of course, they struggled is at wide receiver. And this week, today Jordan Matthews kind of talked about Trufant, saying that he was one of the best players in the league. I'll ask you, John, when you look at Atlanta, where's the area on their defense that you think the Eagles should go after?
Well, it would be running the football, but they can't do that. So it's going to be it's a much improved defense.
Well, can they or won't they? Can't they or won't they?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think they want to. You can't get behind 14-0. I think that should be cured a little bit by playing at home. So they should have the opportunity to be more balanced, and maybe we'll get a better answer to that question. Because if Carson does throw it 45 times, then you have to start looking at Doug and saying, what's going on? You just don't want to run the football. So we'll see how that shakes out. But as far as Atlanta, they got a much better pass rush. And years past, their biggest issue was the pass rush. They just could not get to the opposing quarterback. And if you can't do that in this league, obviously you're going to have issues. And Vic Beasley's having a very good year. He's got 7.5 sacks. Dwight Freeney's there as a situational guy. Adrian Claiborne inside can get to the pass rush, get to the quarterback a little bit. So they're much improved there. Jordan's right. Their corners are Trufant doesn't get a lot of press, but he's probably one of the best 10 or 15 corners in football. And Alford on the other side is not bad either. They got a rookie safety who's a first-round pick that's playing very well. They have a rookie linebacker that's playing very well. So remember, their head coach was Seattle's defensive coordinator. So that's the mentality they're trying to bring, and they're far from getting there. But Dan Quinn is getting closer and closer, and it's a much improved group.
All right, John, we'll get your pick on the game coming up on tomorrow's show, and, of course, the NFL. I want to get your take on a couple of things. You wrote over at today's pigskin.com about the officiating, Mike Pereira missing the boat on full-time officials. Pete and I kind of talked about this to open up today's show. There are a lot of people out there that think now is the time to go to full-time officials. I'm not one of them. I don't know. I'm not against it. I just don't know what that's going to do. I don't know what it's going to help. But what is the crux of your article on Mike Pereira?
Well, Mike, obviously used to be the head of NFL officiating. Now with Fox, is going to media, and he basically makes his living criticizing the calls. And he, like many people, lambasted Walt Coleman for the Seattle Buffalo and the Richard Sherman shenanigans and all of that. But then at the end, and as you wrote, because he's indoctrinated into the NFL way, he kind of pulled back when talking about full-time officials. No, you can't have full-time officials. And my basic is, why not? I mean, if the players are considered full-time, and I always say, what does every coach say? How does a player get better? Repetitions, doing the same thing over and over again. So it becomes second nature. And I've been arguing for well over a decade, why aren't there NFL officials at every single practice? It accomplishes two things. Mm-hmm. It gives them repetitions. It makes them better. It also allows the players to better understand what the officials are looking for when they have actual NFL officials on the field in live periods that are actually calling the game and calling the practice. So there are a lot of things you could have NFL officials do. And Mike's whole argument was, you're going to lose good officials. And I say, if Ed Hockley wants to go practice law, go practice law. If Walt Coleman wants to get back in the dentist chair, go be a dentist. Because my second theory is the athletes have become so explosive in this game, you got to get younger officials anyway. And you got to get guys to keep up with these players. And I'm not sure middle-aged men can do it, to be perfectly honest. So this league needs a better developmental program for its officiating staff. They need to start at the beginning. They need to develop younger people to be officials that are athletic enough to keep up the game. And there is plenty of work to go around, especially in an industry that grosses $13 billion a year.
Hey, look, and that's one thing, and Brian Billick brought this up as well this morning during Mike and Mike. Pete and I talked about at the beginning of the show are some of these guys going to want to give up their professions? I'm a lawyer, I'm a teacher, I'm a principal, I'm a superintendent, to go be a full-time official where what is the role? Okay, you're away from your family, you're traveling all over the place, you got to go to practices.
You're a high school athletic director, like Sunday's official is. Craig Rolstad is a high school athletic director outside the NFL.
Right. Does he have to travel and be away from his family? Is there some validity to that point?
I don't think so, because plenty of people have to travel for their job. And if you don't want to, that's fine. You don't have to. We'll find somebody else. I mean, there's plenty of people. These guys get paid very, very well to officiate these games. It's not like they're, it's not like they're volunteering at their local high school and making. What
do they make, John? I estimate between 85 and 150, 150,000.
I think it's, officials. It could be. I think referees are 150 to 250 at this stage, and that's as a part-time. Obviously part-time employee. So if you're full-time, those salaries are going to go up. Those salaries are going to go up even higher, and it's a very good job. So, the fact that you're going to be upset because you can't double dip, hey, I understand that, because those guys have been doing it for so long. That's in their mind frame. That's their mentality. But just because that's the way you've always done it, one of the few things I will give Chip Kelly credit for is that's always been his mentality. I don't want to hear that's the reason because that's the way we've always done it. That reason's wrong. You find a new way to do it, and that's what the NFL has to do.
Craig Rolstad is the official for Sunday's game. John, do you know anything about him? Is he a Jerome Boger? Is he going to throw a ton of flags? I mean, I'm finding out about him on the fly. I found out that he's a high school athletic director in Seattle.
One of the problems is I know too much about every NFL referee, and you shouldn't. They've all become basically sort of semi-famous, and that's not a good thing. Because officials in any sport are best when they're anonymous. And people shouldn't, Ed Hockley shouldn't be a household name. Gene Steratore shouldn't be a household name. Jerome Boger doing the Super Bowl shouldn't be a big story, but it is.
Right. And that's part of
you can rattle them off. Pete Morelli, Jeff Triplett, you're doing great.
But that's part of this is when Pete said Craig Wolstead. I've never heard of this guy, so maybe that's a good thing. That we should get a good clean game this weekend. We'll have more on the NFL tomorrow. John McMullen's back with his pick for the game. Check out John's coverage of today's Eagles practice at 97.3 ESPN.com. Thanks, pal.
Hey, thanks, guys.